The first thing you'll need to do is stamp out your brass tags. For that, you'll need your brass tags, a hammer, a stamping pad, and your stamping letters. The stamping pad provides a solid surface for you to do the stamping and prevents damage from happening to the table, ground, floor, whatever it is that may be underneath the stamping pad. Now, when you start creating your letters here, it's best to start with the letters that would be in the middle of your tag. So for example, I've put some letters here in the middle, and this allows each word or each identifier to be lined up where you want it to be rather than too far left, too far right, things like that. So you pull out your letters, whichever one you may need, you line it up, and bingo, bango, bongo. All right, as you can see, this tag is now complete. It's ready to go to the next stage. In the nice light, it's easy to read this label, but sometimes when you're looking at it from far away, it may be difficult to see. So the next step is to take a permanent marker and just color in each letter on your tag. And it'll look messy, and that's okay. We'll clean it up. Make sure the ink gets down there in the grooves. It'll look like that. And then take a disinfecting wipe or an alcohol wipe. I'm using disinfecting wipes just because that's what I have, and they're easily available. You wipe off the excess, and you can see now it's a lot easier to read what is stamped out here. Next, you'll need your radio, some cable, shrink tube, your ferrules, something to cut the wires, and something to crimp the wires. You'll need a piece of shrink tube that's about 1/2 inch long. This is 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch shrink tube, 18 to 10 gauge. Cut a piece off, you can see not too much wider than my thumb. We'll set that aside, use that here a little bit later. We're going to need one of these ferrules. A ferrule is basically a crimper, something that squeezes another item to hold it in place. You can see there's 2 slots in this ferrule, and that's where the steel cable will go, and then we'll crimp that shut, and that will hold the steel cable in place. And then we need a piece of cable. There's not a specific length that you need to cut, but I will cut quite a good long length just to give me a little bit of wiggle room. You know, so this is a little bit longer than my hand, however long that is. I'm going to run this cable through. Now this part is tricky. You need to get everything in the correct order. So if you put on your brass tag, then the next thing you'll need to put on is the shrink tube, and then the metal ferrule. That way, when you put it together and you crimp your ferrule together here, then you can then slide your shrink tube over the metal ferrule. So to put all this together, run the cable, both sides of the cable, through the metal fairing, the metal ferrule. Now you don't have to do this, but I find it makes it easier for the next part is to push the cable in just to the tip of the ferrule, right there, and then just very lightly crimp this single part of the ferrule, and watch, you'll see the hole close up just a little bit right here, and that keeps that part of the cable in place. That allows you to be able to pull the rest of the cable tight. And you can now see how you've got your ring. We'll crimp this part, snip off the excess, run the shrink tube over the ferrule, and then shrink it down. can see how the metal has smushed the steel cable and is going to keep that in place. To cut off the excess, I've got my Lineman pliers here. You could use whatever cutters you have. I just happen to have Linemans pliers, so that's what I'm using. And I'll try to cut as close to the ferrule as possible so there isn't excess steel cable sticking out. So now you've got your steel cable crimped in there. Slide the shrink tube over. You don't have a ton of wiggle room here, so it might take some finagling. Okay, so now that's on. Now all we need to do is run the heat gun over this to shrink the tube. And just like that, Tomcat Jams has its own radio.